Hey everybody, I'm going to try something a little different today. That instead of dealing with a specific DAX or M problem, I wanted to spend some time talking about general strategies to improve your DAX or M capabilities. And the reason I wanted to focus on this is primarily because of a post that a member named Patrick posted in the Enterprise DNA forum about a month or so ago. And his situation really struck a chord with me because it was very similar to my own, in that he'd been watching a lot of videos and doing a lot of reading, really had a good foundation in DAX, but was trying to figure out how to improve on a daily basis from that strong foundation that he'd built. And so in addition to that post, at the same time, I saw this phenomenal article from Alberto Ferrari about 7 reasons why DAX is not easy. And in that article, he talks about the importance of practice. And practice is really something that is at the root of what I'm going to talk about today. He talks in general about practice. I want to spend a fair amount of time today talking about specific elements of practice that I think will be really helpful for those who are looking to improve their capabilities on that day-to-day basis. So before we talk about practice, I wanted to focus on one strategy that he also mentions. And I put this in the category of organizing your tools. And by that, I mean format your DAX. Marco Russo always says, it's not DAX if it's not formatted. And I couldn't agree more with that when I see unformatted DAX, this is what it looks like to me. It's just no capitalization, no punctuation. The words are all there, but they're very difficult to read. It's very difficult to make sense of what's going on here. But if you punctuate it, it becomes really simple and straightforward to read. And the analogy is there exactly with DAX. So this is an actual measure I received on the forum. And I'm not looking to call anybody out here. Most of the measures we receive are not formatted. And this one just happened to be a good example for a number of reasons. And so I look at this and I just have a hard time telling what this is. But if we go ahead and format it, the picture clarifies dramatically. So I can tell right from looking at the formatted DAX, I can tell 3 things. The first of which is I recognize this just by sight as a dynamic segmentation pattern. The second thing is that I can look in the middle here and see this is an unusual construct here. That typically what you see is min and max to define that customer rank group, not rank X. So that's a bit of an unusual circumstance here. And the third thing I can tell is why this is not going to work. That syntactically this may not throw an error initially, but when you run it, it's not going to provide the proper result. And that's because this filter condition, you can kind of compare to the parentheses and see that it's not complete. It's just saying count rows and then a filter, but it's not, when you close out the filter condition, it's not actually providing a condition of saying count rows is greater than 0 or count rows is equal to 5. It's just count rows. And so just by formatting, we can tell a tremendous amount about this measure that we would never be able to tell, or at least that I personally would never be able to tell in looking at the unformatted DAX. So there are a lot of ways to format your DAX. You can do it straight by hand. Many of you are probably familiar with the DAX Formatter tool from SQL BI that's fantastic. And I wanted to bring to your attention another tool called DAX Clean Up from Enterprise DNA. Does a lot of the same thing in terms of formatting, but it's got some nice features is kind of rolling through here in terms of providing access to some of the related tools. So the Enterprise DNA knowledge base, you can search for functions right within the DAX Clean Up tool itself. And then it's got links to a bot for asking questions and some other development tools as well. So something definitely to check out. I've got the link up here, and I'm going to post the full presentation in the YouTube links down below. So on the M side, there's another tool that's been developed in beta, powerqueryformatter.com. You can use in a very similar way to format your M code. And that again makes it much more readable, much more easy to figure out what's going on. So I would highly encourage, if you're not doing that, to begin formatting. And I think what you'll find is that it becomes such second nature that after a while you don't even use the tools, that you just begin to format as you write. And I think what you'll find is that it provides a tremendous level of insight into what's going on. It helps you debug your DAX. It helps you understand the DAX written by others. So highly recommend it if you're not doing that to start. Now the second strategy I want to talk about is one I put under the category of acquiring new tools. And what I mean by that is familiarizing yourself with new functions. And so what I found really helpful is every day or so, I try to do it every day, is just familiarize yourself with a new DAX or M function. And by familiarize, I don't mean master. All I mean is basically kind of a cursory view of what does it do, how to use it, what does it return in terms of a table, a value, a date, a Boolean. And the goal in this is recognition, that as you develop more and more complex solutions, you've got more tools available to you where when a situation comes up, it jogs something in your memory that says, I've seen a function that handles this exact situation. And just by kind of that general familiarity with the 200 or so DAX functions, and I believe there are over 720 M functions, but by cycling through on a daily basis, over the course of a year, you can cover a lot of ground. And the Enterprise DNA Knowledge Base is a great resource for this, that in addition to the key info about the function, it provides links to forum posts, to examples, to short videos. And I'll show you in a minute a tool that will kind of link all this together for you. And in terms of study, you can do it in a number of ways. You can do it in kind of a random way where you just every day pick a new function and learn it. Or you can prioritize, and I would say if you're going to prioritize, start with virtual table and filter functions. That the ability to manipulate virtual tables is one of those things that will give you a quantum leap forward in your DAX capabilities. So in terms of how to go about doing this, I've actually created a tool that I use and I'll provide to you in the comment section below. And it just, what it does is you open up the report and it just randomly provides a DAX function of the day and an M function of the day. And if you were to click on the DAX function, it would take you to the Enterprise DNA Knowledge Base entry, and then for the M function to the Microsoft M reference guide. And so I'm not going to click on those, but I'll show you generally what that looks like. So here on the left is the knowledge base, and it's got what the function does, how it works. It's got an audio explanation as well as a visual explanation. It's got links to blog posts, forum posts, videos. And then on the right is the M reference guide for Microsoft. So the syntax, just some general notes and examples. So as I say, a great way to familiarize yourself. And each day, if you just do a little bit, what you'll find is over the course of a few months or 6 months or a year, you've really got a tremendous amount of knowledge just about, generally speaking, what the DAX functions or M functions do, and that ability to call on that information when you need it. Now, the next strategy I want to talk about is what I refer to as borrowing tools from others. And what I mean by this is utilizing existing code and patterns. And if we think of a pattern as a reusable solution to a commonly occurring problem, so it could be something like cumulative totals, it could be events in progress, it could be dynamic segmentation. There's a whole series of regularly recurring patterns that you see over and over again. And there are some established sources for this, the most famous of which is the daxpatterns.com from SQL BI. Also the quick measures gallery, which is a little bit of a misnomer. It's not really quick measures. What it is some really complex patterns, some simple patterns, some complex patterns, really a really interesting range of reusable scenarios on the Microsoft gallery. And then I wanted to highlight two new ones, both on the Enterprise DNA site. available to anybody, no matter whether you're a member or not. One of which is a forum category on DAX patterns, and again, like the knowledge base, is linked to videos, is linked to other forum posts, provides a lot of context and examples for the patterns, as well as a similar one for an M code showcase for Power Query and M. And the main caveat here is there's a lot of great information in these sites, but don't use code you don't understand, even if it seems to work. And somebody once told me a quote, and I unfortunately don't remember where it came from, but they said, obviously wrong results are embarrassing, but subtly wrong results are what get you fired. And using code you don't understand is, I think, the quickest way to generate subtly wrong results. That there may be boundary conditions, there may be special exceptions, and you really need to understand that code before you use it in your own report. But that also presents a great learning opportunity to really disassemble some complex patterns and really learn what they do and how they do them. So far the strategies we've talked about really are pretty easy. That formatting your DAX is very straightforward with the right tools. Learning new functions and familiarizing yourself with them just takes a couple of minutes a day. And then utilizing existing codes and patterns, as long as you take the time to understand it, is also very straightforward given the excellent resources out there that provide those. So the next strategy I'm going to talk about is where the really hard work comes in. And I refer to this as regularly building something new. And the situation I think most of us find ourselves in is that for the work we do, it involves a limited number of reports and analyses, or a limited number of types of reports and analyses. And that over time we learn the DAX and the M necessary to do that work. And after that initial burst of learning, we can kind of stagnate in our development. And so the solution to that is to regularly build something new that challenges you to expand your Power BI skill set. And what I've found is that user forums, user communities are perhaps the best way to do this, because they're a never-ending source of really challenging problems at all skill levels, dealing with often problems and functions that you may not encounter regularly in your normal course of work, but that are really valuable to know and will improve your skill level. In addition, data challenges, and I have a link here to the Enterprise DNA challenges, which are open to everybody, are extremely useful in this as well. Getting a new data set every couple of weeks, being challenged to analyze that, to visualize it, is another way to really build your skill set. But the user forums, most of the time we focus on the questioner, so the value of somebody being able to ask a question and get an answer to it. But in the course of those questions being asked, what's also happening is you're really building kind of a world-class training course for people trying to improve their skills. That you're putting questions up there that are challenging, that are interesting, that are different. And just yesterday, one of the members on the Enterprise DNA site, Diego, actually thanked a questioner for providing questions that he finds really interesting and valuable to learn from. So I thought that was cool and really made my point exactly. So the question is, how do we best utilize all that training opportunity to focus ourselves and to improve our skill set? And there's a strategy called deliberate practice, which was developed by a team of psychologists about 25 years ago, led by K. Anders Ericsson. And it's become a very famous technique. It's been applied in rigorous analyses and review to a huge range of fields. I have here surgery, acting, chess, computer programming, music, many others. And consistently what it shows is that experts are made, not born. And so in the context that we're talking about, it's not that somebody on a forum answers a ton of questions because they're great at Power BI. It's the fact that they're great at Power BI because they've been answering a ton of questions. That it's that repetition and hard work that shapes the capability and the expertise. And deliberate practice, there are really 5 general characteristics. that it's specifically designed to stretch you just beyond your current abilities. It's a high repetition activity, so you're kind of over and over seeking to exercise that stretch on a repeated basis. Continual feedback, and again, user forums are outstanding for this, because when you post a solution, you'll get feedback immediately from the community and from the original requester as to whether that solution actually worked. Deliberate practice is very demanding, it's difficult, and the goals are based on process, not outcome. So the outcome here is you're trying to improve DAX or your Power Query skills, but the goals themselves are based on specific process steps. And I'll give you an example. That these are my particular goals. So what I try to do is answer at least one question per day that's difficult for me. It may not be difficult for somebody at a higher skill level, but it's something that is difficult for me to answer and stretches me. I look for questions that try to maximize Power Query and M responses. That's a skill set I'm trying to build. And then once a week, I try to tackle a problem that's pretty far outside my current capabilities, as I call it. It's the swing for the fences approach, where I may not even post the solution. I may not even get very far on it, but I really try to stretch myself in terms of learning something way outside my current skill set. And this is just an example. This is what's worked for me, but you can kind of craft those deliberate practice goals around your particular goals as well. So when I've talked to people about this approach, there are three generally common responses that I hear. The first of which is, I'm still learning Power BI. And I put this quote in here from Russo and Ferrari because there are approximately 7.5 billion people on the planet. And I would say it's pretty much a consensus that they are the two most knowledgeable among those 7.5 billion about DAX. And in this article, in the first paragraph, they talk right up front about their learning that's occurred and what they needed to understand better in order to get to a solution. So if they're still learning DAX and Power BI, the rest of us certainly are as well. The second thing I hear is, I don't know enough to be solving other people's problems. And what I would say to that is, problems are posted at all levels. And so pick those that are a slight stretch for you. That what's a slight stretch for you may not be a slight stretch for somebody else, but if you pick the ones that are right for you, it provides that learning opportunity. And all you have to do is to know a little bit more than the person who's posting the question. And finally, people express, well, what if my solution is bad or wrong or incomplete? And, I say here, hi, welcome to the club. That some of your solutions absolutely are going to be incomplete, and that's okay. Frequently, I'll post something that says, hey, I got this 80% of the way there, and that's as far as I could get. Can somebody else bring it over the goal line? And that's where the community problem solving really comes into play. In addition, you're going to post some solutions that, frankly, are probably not going to be great. And we all do that, and that is learning over time. And people will correct and build on your efforts. One of the members has a saying that says, if it works, it's not stupid. And I like that in the sense that it may not be the best way of doing things, but if it helps move somebody forward, it's worth posting. And it's also a great way to gauge your progress over time. That every 6 months or so, I look back on the solutions I've provided, and it provides a great way of measuring how much I've learned over that period. So I'd really encourage you, despite maybe having misgivings, to look at doing this at the level you're comfortable with. And finally, the last strategy is upgrading the toolbox itself. So using a better DAX or M editor. And the native Power BI editor is quite terrible. It provides very little functionality. And there's not a perfect solution yet, but the roadmap from Microsoft indicates that soon there's going to be the ability to use third-party tools like DAX Studio within Power BI and not have to copy measures back and forth. So there's a number of different ways you can improve the tool itself. Learning keyboard shortcuts, and I've got a shortcut here to a whole range of shortcuts we've compiled in a table and in a format you can actually print out or put on a mouse pad that improve the functionality of the native editor quite significantly. DAX Studio is a phenomenal tool. As I mentioned, the current weakness is that you have to copy measures back and forth in order to run them, but it's a great way of building complex measures. And then I want to provide a little bit of a teaser trailer here for Visual Studio Code that Nick Monet, who's another expert who's providing great videos on the Enterprise DNA TV site, is going to be starting a series soon on using Visual Studio Code to manage what he calls code snippets. So patterns and recurring code that he uses and manages in a very cool way in Visual Studio Code to help expedite his DAX development. So that's going to be coming soon. So I hope this has been helpful to you. There's strategies that have worked for me. I would love to hear if they've worked for you or if there are different strategies you've employed that have worked well. As always, if you've learned something today or you found this useful, please throw the video a like and subscribe to the Enterprise DNA TV site so that you get notified of more content as we continue to provide it. So as always, thanks again for watching and listening, and look forward to hearing from you.